We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to Connecticut.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Thursday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. When I tell you, it's been a long time since I've been this excited to do an episode of the Aaron Torres Pod. It's gonna be May, but I'll tell you what, we still got a lot to talk about, okay? We're gonna open the big college hoops story of the day, Kentucky versus St. John's, game on, Christmas time in Atlanta. You know, Torres has takes on that one. Speaking of takes, we got to talk about the interview that Mark Pope did with John Rothstein, what we learned, what it means for the 25-26 Kentucky Wildcats. From there, we will talk about a few different topics as well. We will discuss AJ Dybantsa officially arriving at BYU. What are realistic expectations with the number one player in America now in Provo? Then from there, we'll wrap on two topics that are certainly in the news. Bill Belichick and his girlfriend. I know some of you didn't love me talking about it. I'm sorry. It's a college football topic. He is a state employee of North Carolina. We got to discuss it. Then I'll tell you what, for the new listeners of the show, I have a long-standing beef with JJ Redick dating back about 3-4 years. He called me some names once upon a time on his podcast. Well, I will tell you what. I certainly reveled in watching him fall flat on his face as an NBA head coach over the last couple weeks. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. Bottom line is, a lot of shows take a bunch of time off this time of year. We're going to keep rocking and rolling, okay? We got a couple really fun interviews lined up over the next couple weeks. We will be doing, any news and notes. Obviously, our college hoops will do probably an updated top 25 next week. We'll start to do our off-season grade series, which so many of you loved. And then we'll start getting ready for football because it is not too long until we got Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, Florida State in week 1. It's coming faster than we realize. So make sure you're subscribed. Turn on those notifications. We are not slowing down. And as producer Matt has already done, he has pinned the Apple feed, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed. Even if you listen on YouTube, do your boy Torres a favor. Download the show as the light right above me went off. Give me 1 second here. This is a little bit of a technical glitch. Okay, we're right back. Make sure you're subscribed on Apple and Spotify as well. Download the pod, even if you listen on YouTube. Download the podcast. It really does help us with advertisers, with sponsors, stuff like that. Speaking of which, you see this TV right behind me. At some point, we are going to have an advertiser on this TV. If you want it to be you, if you want it to be a company that you own or you work for or whatever, make sure to reach out to me, Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. This show has already reached millions, and I don't mean it facetiously. I'm being dead serious. We have reached millions of people in the calendar year of 2025. We are not slowing down. If you want your product reaching millions upon millions upon millions of people, you can reach out to me at Aaron Torres, podcastquestions@gmail.com. Can DM me, can do whatever you want. But obviously, we are excited for the rest of the year into football and beyond. Speaking of sponsors, speaking of advertisers, I should mention we got a great one. We got one that we love. We love working with. They are our friends. They are our partners. We're, of course, talking about Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so Cauley Puffs we have told you about really since the start of last football season. You don't need me to tell you, but listen, it's that time of year. It's May now. It's May. You're going to go to the beach. You're going to go to the lake. You're going to go to the river. You're going to go to the pool. You're going to sit out in the front lawn in a deck chair with your shirt off, and you can't be looking like a filthy slob, okay? So what do you need? You need a snack that's healthy but delicious. You, my friends, need Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Okay, so I've told you their story. First of all, great story. Family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. One day he was sitting on the couch, basically just like you and I, sitting there saying, okay, I need a snack that's healthy but delicious. I need to create something. He came up with Cauley Puffs, okay? Baked, not fried. avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But the best part is these things taste freaking delicious as well. For more information, this is what I need you to do. Go to Caulipuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com, Caulipuffs.com, or you can find them on Amazon.com as well. May have heard of them. Jeff Bezos approved, baby. That's right. Amazon.com. Just search Cauli Puffs. Throw them in your cart. You already got a cart open. You probably got some stuff in there. Throw some Cauli Puffs in there. Tell them Torres sent you. Try them for yourself. The healthy snack, the alternative to the crap in your grocery aisle. Cauli Puffs and Caulipuffs.com. With that said, to quote Justin Timberlake, it's going to be May, but we are not slowing down. There is no more time to waste. So let's go ahead and get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, listen, from a college hoops perspective, it's going to start to slow down, right? We know what, January, February, March is like for college hoops. We know April is now portal season where rosters are getting built. And there are certainly some big names still in the portal that we're going to react to as they commit. But for the most part, roster building is done. And so now we're going to still talk about this sport as miscellaneous things pop up. And there was certainly something that was noteworthy that came out on Thursday afternoon, something that I think everybody had been hoping for, but we didn't know if it was going to happen. I am talking about a game between Kentucky and St. John's. Okay, so this is something that has been talked about since essentially the day that Mark Pope took the Kentucky job. He, of course, was the captain of the 1996 national championship team, played under Rick Pitino. And basically, listen, clearly water is under the bridge with Pitino. He was back at Big Blue Madness. The fan base at Kentucky loves him. Certainly the fan base at St. John's loves him. And it always seemed like, okay, we got to get something on the calendar between these two programs. There was talk of a home and home. It never really came together. But I bring it up because over the last few days, it felt like there could be something at the CBS Sports Classic. Okay, CBS Sports Classic, for people who forget, is the event. It's a one-day event, so it's not a tournament. It's a one-day event. And for years, there's been 4 teams. It's been Kentucky, North Carolina, UCLA, and Ohio State. Well, over the weekend, there were rumblings that one team was asking out and that either St. John's or UConn could become the team that fills the absence of the team asking out. Now, as a UConn guy, I can tell you I actually felt pretty good. It was not going to be UConn. I'll explain why in a minute. But over the last couple of days, we said, could we potentially see Rick Pitino and St. John's against Mark Pope and Kentucky in this event that takes place every single year right around Christmas? The event itself kind of needed a boost. Well, we got the official word on Thursday. Producer Matt, play the two coaches yapping via FaceTime.
30 years since you won your first national championship, and I got mine, thanks to you. And I think we should give the Johnnies and all of BBN the greatest Christmas gift ever on December 20th in Catlanta. What do you say?
It feels like it was about 7-8 years ago that we won the championship, but I coached one of the greatest teams in the history of the game, and you were the captain. And now we get to coach against each other. I'm just turning 60 years of age, and you're still young.
I can't wait, Coach. I love you so much, man. Let's go make this happen.
Love you, Mark. Let's go. It'd be so exciting for both programs. And
so there you have it, December 20th, 2025, the last Saturday before Christmas. I think there's going to be some college football playoff games going on that day, but make sure to clear a few hours because we are getting Pitino versus Kentucky in Atlanta. Let me say this, man, great for college basketball, another marquee game in what should be a really fun early part of the college hoop slate in 2025, 2026 that we will be talking about a lot here over the next couple months, okay? So first of all, like I said, you started to hear rumblings that this was going to happen. Matt Jones, Kentucky Sports Radio, he put out a tweet on Sunday, I think it was, basically implying that there were rumblings that one of the 4 teams in the event wanted out. Again, the event had been Kentucky, Ohio State, UCLA, and North Carolina. I retweeted, quote tweeted, whatever, that basically my assumption was that it was UCLA. Mick Cronin has been very vocal about the travel that has been involved with the Big Ten. And immediately when I saw this event was in Atlanta, I could see Mick Cronin, stomping his feet into the CBS offices and saying, we're not flying back across country. Remember, now that they're in the Big Ten, I mean, we're talking about probably 5 to 6 cross-country road trips every season now. You play 10 road games in the Big Ten. Obviously, you're going to play a couple on the West Coast with Washington, Oregon, USC, but that's still 3 or 4 trips, plus the Big Ten tournament, plus, of course, if you get the NCAA tournament like they did this year in Lexington. So I kind of felt like it was going to be UCLA, and I didn't really think it was going to be UConn because Dan Hurley's been very vocal about the types of games that he was looking for, and this didn't really feel like this was going to be the opportunity for UConn. Doesn't really matter. The bottom line is with UCLA out, they needed a spot. Rick Pitino and St. John's are in, and I'll just say this. As a college basketball fan, you just have to be excited. Okay, we're going to break down the Kentucky depth chart a little bit more only because Mark Pope did speak with John Rothstein earlier this week. But when I look at these two teams, in my opinion, are 2 of the top 10 teams in college basketball coming into 2025, 2026. And of course, that's assuming there's nothing crazy with, one, God forbid, injuries. But certainly, obviously, Kentucky has Otega Owe testing the NBA draft waters. I would obviously have to reevaluate them if he did not end up staying in college basketball. But on paper, these are 2 of the top 10 teams in the country, okay? St. John's has done as good of a job as anybody in college basketball in the portal, revamping that roster. Zuby Ejiofor is the returnee of note, all Big East second team. But what Rick Pitino has done is insane. Bryce Hopkins, ironically, remember, former Kentucky Wildcat Bryce Hopkins. So first of all, you have the Bryce Hopkins revenge game. Bryce Hopkins played against Kentucky in the NCAA tournament a few years ago for Providence. And then you have Josan Sinan, former 5-star who played at Arizona State. He is joining St. John's. Oziah Sellers, who I think is going to be a really good player for them. Dylan Mitchell, the transfer from Cincinnati, a one-time McDonald's All-American. And I just bring it up because when I look at St. John's, and I said this, I did update my way too early top 25 earlier in the week. We'll talk about it probably on Sunday night show. But I only bring it up because when I updated my top 25, I said that I believe that St. John's, a 31-win team, which won the Big East regular season and the Big East tournament, best season, obviously, in 40 years. I said at that time, I believe that the roster that Rick Pitino has put together is just as athletic, will be just as good defensively, and will be much better offensively with Bryce Hopkins, with Oziah Sellers, with Josan Sinan, and of course with Ian Jackson, who I somehow forgot, maybe the biggest recruit of the Rick Pitino era. Now, listen, there are questions about the point guard. Is it going to be Ian Jackson? Dylan Darling comes in as a transfer. But I just bring it up because St. John's on paper is one of the 2, 3, 4 best teams in the country, and 4 or 5 might be a little bit too negative. I think I have them at number 3 in my way too early top 25. By the way, as producer Matt has pointed out, we do have a Torres on SJU account for all of you St. John's fans. Torres on SJU. Kentucky, listen, we've talked about the roster, and we'll talk about it again in a minute. But what's interesting about Kentucky is that, I think they're easily a top 10 team as well. Mark Pope, we've talked about the fact that it was very clear in the offseason he had to prioritize size, athleticism, and toughness. I think by the end of last year, when all the injuries started to creep up, you saw a team that athletically probably couldn't really match up with the best teams in college basketball. We saw it in the loss in the NCAA tournament to Tennessee, on and on. Well, he's added some of the best transfers in the country. Again, we're going to break it down in a minute, but Jaden Quaintance, I think he could be like SEC Player of the Year if everything goes well next year. I think, by the way, Otega Owe could be SEC Player of the Year next year if things go well also. We have Denzel Aberdeen, who, if you listen to the interview with John Rothstein, Mark Pope loves. You add Mo Diabate, I think one of the most underrated players in the portal this offseason. And so I just bring it up because this Kentucky team, to me on paper, and I didn't name everybody, but I'm just telling you who is on the roster, it's going to be as good as anybody in college basketball. And so that is the top 10 matchup that we are going to get in December. I'll say this too, a couple thoughts here as we kind of switch gears in a minute. But one, first of all, I think this is actually great for this event in general. I think college hoops has done a very good job of putting on compelling games and compelling matchups that people want to watch basically from the start of the season with the Champions Classic. Maui is usually pretty good, although we'll see what happens. It's a weaker field this year, Battle for Atlantis, etc. This was kind of the event that it kind of felt like just didn't have a lot of juice. If it basically it's Kentucky and Carolina, Ohio State has its years, and then UCLA is a good program, but UCLA doesn't bring fans, and sometimes it's a neutral court. And I've been to this event 4 or 5 times. I was at it once in Brooklyn, twice in Vegas. And, this is the kind of event that if Kentucky isn't bringing, 5,000, 7,000 fans with them, sometimes the event just kind of lacks a little bit of luster. I actually was talking to some people like, this is an event. Should we cancel it? Should we move it on campuses so you'd get, a couple games at Rupp Arena, a couple, whatever. The point I'm trying to make is I think it needed some new juice. I don't think, UCLA bouncing is the worst thing. And now all of a sudden this becomes a must-watch event for college hoops fans. And I think it's an important event because, again, it's going to be a top 10 matchup, Rick Pitino versus Kentucky. Obviously, the first time since he left, since he got to St. John's, A couple other notes I'll add really quickly. One, Kentucky schedule is insane. Okay. So Kentucky, can't criticize them for not challenging themselves in the out of conference. Michigan State in the Champions Classic. That will be the first week of the season. Also, never forget, Indiana is now back on the schedule. That one is at Rupp this year. That's a 6-game series. I forget, how it all works. There's a couple games in Indy, 1 game in Bloomington, whatever. But Indiana's back on the schedule with a longtime rival. You have Louisville, which is going to be a top 10 team at the Yum Center later on in the year. And oh, by the way, on top of all of that, we are awaiting word. Gonzaga, by the way, in Nashville. And you have, of course, the SEC-ACC Challenge, the new event of the last couple years, where you could get a marquee opponent from the ACC as well. So Kentucky's schedule is loaded. From the St. John's perspective, we don't know a ton right now. But to me, this is the Rick Pitino element of it all. Rick Pitino showing up. Rick Pitino, they were playing games in front of 800 people at Carnesecca Arena 2 years ago, of probably a 4,000 or 5,000 seat facility. Now you're in the Champions or the CBS Sports Classic playing Kentucky, and it is going to be one of the most anticipated games of the year. Absolutely crazy, absolutely awesome. The other early scheduling notes, it appears as though Ole Miss will play St. John's at Madison Square Garden. We're awaiting word on that. And I think there's going to be a couple other big ones still on the St. John's schedule. That's on top of 20 league games in the Big East. But I'll tell you what, man, listen. One, I love that these schools waited. I'm glad that they waited. I'm glad that they waited till May. I'm glad that this didn't come out like March 11th when we had a million things to talk about. But two, I think this is great for college basketball. As we say, with the college football playoff going deeper into December and January, it's always good to have games that kind of make you want to watch. This is certainly going to be one, and I'm excited about that. Producer Matt, I was going to go straight to Mark Pope, but I'll tell you what, this is what we're going to do. We will take a quick break. We'll come back. When we do, I got a lot of thoughts on Mark Pope. Had an awesome interview with John Rothstein. John Rothstein's the man. Love Rothstein. Mark Pope had some interesting comments there. Also want to talk AJ Dybantsa officially on campus at BYU. What does it mean for the Cougars? Torres is Cougar crazy. We'll come back, talk about that, and we got to continue the conversation about Bill Belichick's girlfriend because there were some very intriguing updates over the last couple days. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Auburn fans, we already know the freeze warning has hit the plains. Make sure to get your freeze warning t-shirts. Also, Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, If you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Had to do some rearranging in the studio during the commercial break. A little bit out of breath here, but the show must go on, okay? So let's keep the conversation going. A couple more college hoops topics. Again, this is a show that for people who are new to this, we'll talk about some other stuff, especially this time of year as the college hoops news kind of slows down a little bit. But there was one interesting piece of news that I think is absolutely worth discussing. And it's the fact that for the first time that I'm aware of since the season ended, Mark Pope talked publicly on Wednesday afternoon. Now, look, maybe there was an interview at the Final Four with College Game Day or Jay Billis or whatever. I don't know. But I haven't seen him talk very much about next season's 2025-2026 roster with good reason. Pieces are coming, pieces are going. The roster is mostly set. But what is also worth noting is that there's always subject to change. Otega Owe is testing the draft waters, whatever. Bring it up because on Wednesday, Mark Pope did sit down with John Rothstein from CBS. Very good interview. Listen to it on Thursday morning, where he kind of revealed a lot of different things about this upcoming season. Okay, so we just talked about it in regards to St. John's, but this is a team that's going to have Jaden Quaintance, Mo Diabate, Jalen Lowe at point guard. And so what I want to do is just talk a little bit about the interview itself, but then really what we learned about what Mark Pope thinks about this 2025-2026 roster, okay? So the first thing I do want to talk about is the returnees, okay? Because I'm really excited for some of these guys. Otega Owe, I think could be like SEC Player of the Year if things go well, assuming he comes back, he's testing the draft waters. I think Brandon Garrison's due for a big leap. By the way, apparently people were upset with what I said about Colin Chandler the other day. I mean, I said I think he's going to be like the 8th, 9th guy. People were like, no, he's not. I'm like, well, I mean, do the math. I mean, he's a very good player. I think he could play in the NBA someday, but you look at the roster that has been put together, he's probably going to be the 8th, 9th guy. So Trent Noah's coming back, Colin Chandler, Brandon Garrison, and Otega Owe. Producer Matt, why don't you go ahead and play what Mark Pope had to say about the returnees, this via John Rothstein's podcast.
Which second-year players specifically in your system do you anticipate will make a major jump during the 25-26 season?
Yeah, I think all of them. I think Brandon Garrison, man, he's shown even in this young offseason, he is hungry right now. You know, he's a McDonald's All-American who had an unbelievable first year at Oklahoma State as a freshman, and then clearly took a massive jump forward last year. And I think he's ready to emerge as a superstar, and he understands how huge this summer is for him. He's really focused. He's got a very precise agenda, things he's working on. Mm-hmm. And I know he's really hungry. I expect Colin Chandler to take a massive jump. He showed huge strides in the last month of the season, and he's got limitless capacity to be really special. And this Trent Noah, I'm telling you, this Trent Noah is a baller, okay? He is a big-time basketball player. He's going to bring over the next seasons, he's going to bring some incredible physicality and skill and toughness that's going to make everybody here proud. Otega is going through this draft process, and we're cheering for him every step of the way. But I know a lot of his heart is back here at Kentucky. And if he does return, he'll probably return as the presumptive, SEC Player of the Year favorite. And clearly he's got a beautiful future ahead of him.
So listen, I think first of all, you have to be excited if you're a Kentucky fan because of the returning pieces, right? We all, and I include myself this time of year, we get so excited about the transfers, about the this, about the that, about the 5 stars, whatever. As Mark Pope said, the success of any program is going to be in who you return, right? You go back to this past season, Auburn, #1 team in the country for most of the season. The whole team was basically back except for Todd Pettiford. Janai Broome was back. Chad Baker-Mazara was back. Chaney Johnson, on and on. Auburn, Florida, Walter Clayton, Will Richard, Houston brought back basically everybody. So to me, you're bringing back pieces. There's another part of the interview where Mark Pope talks about just the way it's going to make things easier in practice where everybody knows the language, everybody knows how to communicate, and how the players that have been there can kind of communicate with the guys that are coming in. So I think one, that has to have you excited, is I'm with him. I said it a minute ago. I think Otega Owe can be an all SEC type player, maybe SEC player of the year. And I think if you just watch Brandon Garrison, I just think he is due for a monster season if everything goes well and if he improves the way that I think we all think he can. What was equally interesting from Mark Pope, there was a couple other interesting quotes about some of the new guys. Producer Matt, on the lower ticker, you can go ahead and put that Jaden Quaintance quote, because that was the first one that caught my attention. So Mark Pope on Jaden Quaintance. We are in a full rush, okay? And so remember with Jaden Quaintance is dealing with an injury, and Mark Pope said, when I say full rush, we're going to rush back to 100% complete health. And so we're optimistic that we're going to have really, really good results in the fall. We'll see how that goes, but we're really going to rush him back to get to 100% healthy before we roll him out there on the court, okay? So first of all, with the Jaden Quaintance stuff, one, don't want to spoil things. I'm hoping to have him on the podcast sometime here soon. But two, one thing I'll say is that, one, he's an amazing player. And I said this the other day, and of course, people were just flat out wrong. I said the guy averaged 9.5 points, 8 boards, 2.5 blocks as a 17-year-old in the Big 12. And people said, oh, what's the big deal? Jeremiah Fears was 17. No, Jeremiah Fears was 18 years old. Jeremiah Fears, of course, played at Oklahoma. Jeremiah Fears was basically a full year older than Jaden Quaintance. How about Cooper Flagg? Cooper Flagg, we lauded him because he was only 18 years old for most of the college basketball season. Jaden Quaintance is like 6 to 7 months younger than Cooper Flagg. Cooper Flagg born December of 2006. Jaden Quaintance born July of 2007. So do the math. That's about 8 months younger. And so as a true freshman, Jaden Quaintance, he played the entire season as a 17-year-old. He is a guy who averaged about 10 points, 8 boards, 2.5 blocks per game. And I'm just here to tell you, if it all clicks, oh my goodness, it is game on. By the way, as far as the injury is concerned, I think it's worth noting. I've talked to people around him, and Jaden Quaintance has done a few interviews where he said the same, but he basically said, like, look, I expect to be back on the court, ready to go for the start of the season. As I've told you many times, my understanding is that barring something surprising and unexpected, he'll be cleared to return to the court maybe like mid to late August, and he'll be ready for 5-on-5 probably in September, which then sets you up for a situation where, oh, by the way, he could, be ready to go for the start of the season. So one, you have that exciting piece of news from Jaden Quaintance. I think he'll be ready to play. I think he could be one of the best players in the SEC. Then there was the talk about Jalen Lowe. Okay, so Jalen Lowe, for those of you who don't remember, he is the new point guard, came from Pitt. Okay, really good player, 17 points per game, about 5.5 assists per game. Not a great three-point shooter, but he is so athletic that I ultimately think that he is going to be a guy that steps into this system and has immediate success. Well, you know who else feels that way? Mark Pope does, because here's what he said on Jalen Lowe, his new point guard. I'm excited to get him here and hyper speed his game. We're really going to unleash him and push him to play with as much pace as he possibly can. He's just so athletic. He's got such a herky-jerky nature to his game. He's like an elite level tailback that can cut, like his cuts could be a 270 degree on a dime kind of cut, change direction, things of that nature. I mean, I'll tell you this, he's another one that I am just so excited about to see this coming season because, listen, first of all, Lamont Butler, if he had been healthy, would have been all SEC first team. He might have been. I can't remember how all the SEC teams ranked out. But I think Jalen Lowe is going to be a different kind of point guard for Mark Pope in Kentucky. And I'll say this, Mark Pope at that team's best, they were playing so fast, so athletic, so up and down this past year. I think they can play even faster, and I think Jalen Lowe is going to be the X factor in that. Super athletic point guard, as Mark Pope said, quick twitch kid, and I think he is going to be the head of the snake. I thought it was also interesting in the interview, Mark Pope kind of referenced, oh, by the way, basically he said something about, as far as next year's team is concerned, he kind of referenced like, oh, by the way, Jalen Lowe was the guy. Remember, I think about 4 or 5 of the guys on next year's team all took visits this weekend. Denzel Aberdeen did, Mo Diabate did, but he said that Jalen Lowe was the guy that was kind of bringing everybody together, getting everybody kind of, just, communicating at the dinner table when they all went out to dinner. He was the one asking questions, things like that. And so I think Kentucky fans are going to be excited to see him, kind of develop and kind of evolve and kind of be the guy that kind of is the leader, of that team. And really kind of the, the guy that, again, I just think I don't want to say everything's going to run through him, but I think he is going to be an important piece of what they do and how they do it. And I'm with Mark Pope, is I think because he played for Pitt, because that team wasn't very good, I think there's a possibility that he's even better than people think. And I think what's most important with him is he's a player who I think is going to be better when he has more talent around him. You think about the fact he averaged 5.5 assists per game, and I'm not even sure that the talent around him was very good. I think you got to be excited about having him if you are a Kentucky fan. Finally, I'll say this, is that I'm trying to find the quote here, because the other thing that caught my attention from this interview is that basically Mark Pope was asked if he was done putting together this roster. And I bring it up because he basically said, first of all, he said what we said on the show. Let me see if I can just find the quote. I think I wrote it down. Okay, here we go. So he basically was asked about the team. And if you remember, they were at 13. Travis Perry enters the transfer portal right before the portal closes. And we talked about, like, is there another guy in the portal? Do you need to add another guy? Should you add another guy? And what I basically said was this, is I said, look, there is someone somewhere that is going to want the opportunity to play Kentucky. Maybe a 5th-year guy, maybe a transfer guy, maybe a younger guy that's just like, you know what? I've been playing at this low level in front of 250 fans, in front of 500 fans in this conference. I want the opportunity to play in the SEC, maybe the best conference in college basketball. And I want to be able to play with the best players on the best team on the biggest stage of college basketball. Well, I bring it up because Mark Pope was asked if his roster is done and asked about the roster. And Mark Pope said, I'd like to play them all. I have 12 guys that will help us, and we're actually going to try to round out this roster. I love this quote. I'm actually scouring the planet right now for guys that would fit in as maybe a redshirt guy that would kill it in practice, or be a last-year guy of your career that wants to come here and put on this one-of-a-kind jersey and be a part of this. So first of all, I love the scouring the globe quote. Like, got somebody in Antarctica right now. Like, is he looking for pickup games in Antarctica or like, Asia or wherever? But it's clear to me that the roster is not done. But again, I think that at this point we have to remember, if the house settlement thing passes through, you're going to be up to 15 scholarship players. And so you can bring in 2 to 3 players and you just say, look, you're probably not going to play. You're probably not going to get very much NIL, but you can be a part of this. And again, it's going to appeal to somebody. It's not going to appeal to everybody, but it's going to appeal to somebody. And so I'm curious, how do they fill out this roster? By the way, he mentioned scouring the planet. Is it somebody international? Is it somebody that's not on our radar? I don't know. But what I do know is I don't think this roster is quite done. I think, by the way, it's just kind of a side note. I think a lot of people, a lot of schools right now are trying to find that 11th, 12th, 13th guy that's really just more of a practice player. So I'll be curious to see how it shapes up for everybody. I know like UConn is still in the mix for 2 or 3 guys that really won't have very much of a role next year. BYU, who we're going to talk about in half a second, just took a guy who's probably going to be like their 8th guy next year. So it's an interesting scenario, but Mark Pope had a lot to say. But I think the one thing that I learned in that interview, that guy likes his team. It sounds like he is fired up to coach them. I am fired up to watch them. And as I said a minute ago, we're going to get plenty of opportunities because they got Michigan State. They got Louisville at Louisville. They got Indiana at Rupp, Gonzaga in Nashville, and, of course, now St. John's in Atlanta. What a season it is going to be. By the way, follow our Torres on UK account. And if you're fired up for the season, you don't got to wait. Hope and Pope, baby. Get that Hope and Pope t-shirt. Should mention, by the way, we have limited sizes, but if you order today, we can probably get it to you for Mother's Day, certainly for Father's Day. Hope and Pope, Aaron Torres, online.com/merchandise. All right. One other college hoop story, and then I want to transition to some bigger picture stuff. I saw this. So BYU, program we've talked about a lot on this show over the last probably year or so. And the reason we've been talking about them so much is because, I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm not saying I'm whatever. But I was kind of one of the first people that kind of picked up on like, oh, there's something going on over there. Eric Musselman leaves for USC. John Calipari leaves for Arkansas. Mark Pope leaves for Kentucky. BYU hires this guy, Kevin Young, that nobody knows very much about. But if you were paying close attention this time last year, it was like, oh, they're putting together a squad. And it was right around, I think it was in May, that Yegor Demon, who's going to be a lottery pick, committed out of Russia. Cannon Catchings didn't quite work out, but he was obviously a very high-profile recruit. Loved some of their portal additions, Mawit Mag and guys of that nature. Didn't realize how good Kebakeda was. Okay, but I bring it up because it was obviously an incredible calendar year one for Kevin Young. You make a Sweet 16 for the first time since 2011. But I'll tell you this, I think the moment that we all realized, that America realized, people, if you listen to this show, if you know me, then we realized it before most everybody else, okay? But I think the moment that everybody kind of realized just what this BYU thing could be, well, it came in whatever it was. I think it was November of this year when AJ Dybantsa, number one recruit in America, could go anywhere in college basketball that he wanted. He chose BYU. Number one player in America. We're going to talk about his game in a minute, but I think I said this the other day. With the offseason here, I have obviously a little bit more free time. I'm not watching as many games as I was. I went back and put on some AJ Dybantsa highlights from like the Hoop Summit and things like. I forgot how freaking good this kid is. Like sometimes we overrate some of these kids. But I'll tell you this. I remember years ago, an assistant coach at a high major told me, he said, even within McDonald's All-Americans, there are kids that are Big Macs and there are kids that are double cheeseburgers. In other words, even amongst McDonald's All-Americans, there are the dudes that are like the next level to all of the other guys. Okay. It was Cooper Flagg last year, Paolo Banchero, Cade Cunningham, Evan Mobley. AJ Dybantsa is that dude. 6'9", 7'1" wingspan, athletic, tough, skilled, plays both ends of the court. Okay. Well, I bring it up because I was scrolling through social media on Wednesday night, watching the Lakers get smoked, which we'll talk about in a minute because my boy JJ Redick he's hurting right now. But I only bring it up to very simply say something came across my Twitter feed, and that's this. AJ Dybantsa is officially on campus at BYU. Producer Matt, there he is. There he is. And he put out a tweet that said, quote, Kribski. He's in the house. He's wearing BYU gear. It is official. The number one player in America is officially on campus. And I am just here to say this. It is go time for the Cougars. Torres is Cougar crazy. And I'm here to tell you, everybody else is about to be. Listen, I've said it. It's not hyperbole. This is going to be the most anticipated season in BYU history. I can't wait to watch it unfold. And now that AJ Dybantsa is officially on campus, I think it's time to talk about what are realistic expectations for this team. Because the cool thing about AJ Dybantsa, and we've talked about this, is once he commits, even at BYU, and I think BYU is going to be great for a long time under Kevin Young, okay? But even after AJ Dybantsa commits, I think the folks at BYU realized, hey, we have this 1-year window where the best under 19 player in the world is going to be on our campus. And even as good as we think Kevin Young is going to be, that is a situation that no one except maybe Duke, maybe Kentucky, nobody finds themselves in that situation this often, okay? And so when you have that opportunity, you have to take full advantage, and it's just like we got to do everything we can to maximize this 1 year. By the way, I'll give credit to Duke. I asked John Shire about this at the Final Four. I said, when you got Cooper Flagg, it feels like you built a team. You actively sought out pieces to complement Cooper Flagg. 7'1" center, Kaman Malawach. Big guard, Sion James, Tyrese Proctor. He said, yeah. He said, we knew we had the best player in the world at his age group, maybe the best player in college basketball. We had to take full advantage. I think BYU is doing the same. So first off, I'll say this. Really good roster around him. Richie Saunders is officially back. We talked about him the other day. He officially announced his return last weekend. He could be first team All-American. He might listen. You want to talk about not being hyperbolic? I think you could argue that AJ Dybantsa and Richie Saunders could be in the argument for an all a first team All-American going into next year. Richie Saunders was a player that, by the way, if it wasn't for JT Toppin, Richie Saunders might have been the Big 12 Player of the Year this year. Okay, we talked about him just the other day as it pertained to his return. But I mean, this was a guy that averaged 16.5 points per game, 43% three-point shooting, and was one of the best players in college basketball, specifically over the last month of the season. Okay, so in BYU's final, let's do some math here: 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 games. So 11 games, including the Kansas game that I was at. Richie Saunders scored 20 or more points in 7 of their final 11 games, okay? That included 25 points in the Sweet 16 against Bama, 25 points in the round of 32 against Wisconsin. I don't think they beat Wisconsin without him. 23 against Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament, 23 against Iowa State on the road, 26 against Arizona State, 23 in the win at McHale Center, okay? And so I just bring it up because he himself is an All-American in his own right. He is officially back. Now, he did an interview with BYU TV Sports Nation. Love the guys there. I've been on the show a few times. Love those guys. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet, but I think Richie Saunders himself kind of realized, we have a special window here to do something special. I want to be part of it. We mentioned a few weeks ago, Robert Wright, transfer from Baylor. I'll tell you this, I'm working on my final transfer portal rankings. In other words, just basically like, my top ranked players, Yaxel Lendenberg will be number 1 all the way down to, 100, 150, whatever I end up doing. Robert Wright, in my opinion, is a top 10 player in the portal, was in the portal this offseason. 11.5 points, whatever it was, 5.5, 5 assists per game, 35% three-point shooting as a freshman in the Big 12 this year. And what I think is interesting is I think if you literally took every single player in the portal and you focused on exactly what BYU needed to complement AJ Dybantsa, Richie Saunders, and Keba Keita, who obviously is coming back as well, I think you could argue Robert Wright was probably the most perfect fit of every single player that entered the portal this offseason. And you talk about a guy that is going to have an immediate impact this season for the BYU Cougars. Also worth mentioning, by the way, BYU did take a commitment on Thursday afternoon. Not a big guy, a wing from Idaho. I think that everybody kind of realizes what his role is going to be. He's going to be able to come in, shoot threes. Tyler Mroos, I think is how you say the name. 6'7" wing, averaged 10 points per game on 38% three-point shooting. If he's your 7th or 8th man, look at producer Matt. I didn't know Tyler Mroos had pictures on Google, and you found one. Unbelievable. Producer here, you know what? You just got Employee of the Month for Aaron Torres Media. I mean, you're technically the only employee, but you know what? Darn it. You are the Employee of the Month. There's Tyler Mroos right there, okay? He comes in 6'7", three-point shooter, 9.5 points, closer to 10, really. 10 points per game, 38%. This team's going to be awesome, okay? And so as far as next season, like I said, most anticipated in school history, I don't even think there's a doubt. And it really speaks to, we talked about earlier about the impact that Rick Pitino has at St. John's. How about the impact that AJ Dybantsa is going to have on this team and this program and the national profile? Opening their season in Vegas against Villanova. That's a game that I hope to be at. I don't know if I'll be there, but I'm hoping to be there. They are playing in the Jimmy V Classic, John Rothstein reported about a week or 2 ago. So we'll see what happens there. That's going to be in New York City. They're going to have a high-profile opponent. They're playing in one of the Hawaii tournaments, which will obviously be on ESPN. And I've been told they are going to play a game in Boston where AJ Dybantsa is originally from, and it's going to be a high-profile opponent. Now, I was told originally it was going to be UConn. Now it's feeling like it might not be UConn, but I do expect BYU to play a game there. But I just bring it up because this is about to overnight become a national program, a program that we all have to pay attention to. And I don't want to say it's exclusively because of AJ Dybantsa, because that's disrespectful to Richie Saunders, to Keba Keita, to Kevin Young, to the coaching staff, to Rob Wright, to Tyler Mroos, our new guy here. But what I will say is this is becoming one of the more fascinating stories, and I am so excited. And as far as expectations, I'm here to tell you they can't be high enough. Listen, I understand the history of this program. Never been to a Final Four, never won a national championship. This was the first Sweet 16 that this program has been to since 2011. And so, listen, I don't want to put any, too much positive energy out there. There's a full season to play. But when you look at this team, again, I say it all the time, this time of year, all I'm doing all day, every day, is looking at rosters and trying to figure out who's going where, what's the fit here, blah, 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 this and that. And so I only bring it up because when I look at this BYU roster, I think it's okay to dream big. We said it with Richie Saunders. It's okay to dream big if you're a BYU fan. You're going to have the number one player in America, probably the number one pick, another All-American in Richie Saunders, and I think Rob Wright is an all Big 12 first-team kind of guy. And oh, by the way, Cape Ikeda is a monster as well. So get excited, BYU fans, but AJ Dybantsa officially on campus. He was going to get there at some point, but it is May 1st, and he is there. He is practicing in the facility, and it is officially game on for one of the most anticipated seasons in school history. And I'll tell you this, I am as excited. Just, I'll say this. Talking about scheduling stuff, talking about this, talking about that. I know we all got a football season to get to, and we all love college football. I can't wait for college hoops. Can't wait for college hoops. BYU will be as fascinating of a team to follow as anybody. By the way, we might have some exclusive BYU content here coming in the next few weeks. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And by the way, make sure you're following Torres on BYU on Twitter. All right, we're going to come back, take a quick break. We're going to take a break and then come back. When we do, we got to catch up on a few other stories. This Belichick thing. Listen, I know some people don't like me talking about it, but he is a prominent college football coach. This is a college sports show, and it's getting weird, getting very, very, very weird. And then my old buddy, JJ Redick. For people who don't know, me and him got into a little bit of some would call a beef a few years ago. So you can't imagine how much it pained me to see him crash and burn pretty bad in the NBA playoffs. Quick break, talk Belichick. Be right back.
What's up, everybody? It's AT, and listen, long day of podcasting, sometimes don't always look the best. So look at this. This is a little bit not great, okay? Well, here is the great news. The great people at Filebox said, Torres, you're a professional. You just got 50,000 subscribers on YouTube. You need to look better. And so they sent me a couple awesome things. I want to pull them out for you right now. This is all from the winter collection, by the way. Spring collection is coming out. We got the vest, very, very, very nice. The sweater, very professional for when I go to professional events. We got these nice blue jeans. I think the question now everybody's asking is, Torres, how do you actually look when you put that stuff on? Let's find out. Well, what do you think? Sweater fits perfectly. Great for all occasions. When I go to games, when I go out to a dinner, warm weather, cool weather, it's perfect. Speaking of perfect, these jeans are phenomenal. Great for games, great for social events. Oh, by the way, a little bit stretchy if those New Year's resolutions aren't going on as planned. Really quickly, we got to try out. Let's try out the vest. It fits perfectly, not a surprise. So here's the deal. If you want to look as good as Torres, this is what I need you to do. I need you to go to Filebox.com. That's FIOBOC. Filebox.com. And here's the best part. For listeners to the Aaron Torres pod, you get 20% off with code Torres20 at checkout. We also put a referral link in all of our YouTube videos. Thank you to Filebox. By the way, make sure you're following them on social media at FIOBOC. Thank you to Filebox. You want to look as good as Torres, check them out. Again, promo code Torres20.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. By the way, nobody has arrived. And he says, I still hate Christian Laettner and JJ Redick. Well, you got to hear what Torres has to say in JJ Redick. We'll do that in just a minute. We got to do a little bit of a follow-up on the story that has certainly caught everybody's attention in the world of college football, though. That is Bill Belichick, Jordan Hudson. We got a couple updates that are worth discussing. I don't think they're very good or shed a very positive light on the situation. Let's go ahead and dive in. Before we do, let me give the caveat. I had a lot of people in the comment section the other day. Torres, why are you talking about this? It's one man's life. It's their business. Leave them alone. This is what I'd say to that. So I agree. In general, I don't talk about other people's personal lives. I just don't have interest. What happens when the lights are off in your house is between you, the person you're with. If there's more than one person, that's okay too. I don't care, okay? But what I will say is a couple things. Is Bill Belichick, not only is he high profile, listen, the age discrepancy to me is weird. I don't care about that, though. But he is, one, a college football coach. This is a college sports show. Two, he is a very high-profile employee of the University of North Carolina. As a matter of fact, he is the most high-profile employee of the University of North Carolina, and I would venture to guess that he is the highest-paid state employee in the state of North Carolina. And so I do think there is a baseline level of, public expectation. But two, if things are getting weird, and they certainly are behind the scenes, then we got to go ahead and talk about it. Now, we called it TMZ Torres last week. I had a buddy call me and say it should be ATMZ. I'll leave it up to you guys. Do we like ATMZ? Do we like TMZ Torres? But let's go ahead and dive in. We talked about it last episode. We talked about the CBS Sports interview, or CBS News interview, which certainly came off as weird. But to me, why we had to talk about it was because, again, state employee. And there was a follow-up report that basically said that the University of North Carolina is now concerned about this relationship. But let's take it a step further, because what is interesting about it is we've gotten like 3 different updates on this story. It continues to get weird. And I think, listen, maybe if Bill Belichick gets to the season and North Carolina's 11-1 and competing for a playoff berth, it dies down. I don't think this is a story that goes away. Okay. And I want to reiterate, if it was just a 4-year-old guy and a 24-year-old girl, whatever it is, 73 and 24, I wouldn't care. But college football coach, state employees, school is worried, and we got several new updates just since our show on Tuesday. First one, producer Matt, I didn't even send you this, so you can do whatever you want over the next couple minutes. But first of all, we heard this story that North Carolina football was potentially going to be part of Hard Knocks. So if you remember, it was around the NFL Draft Combine. There was, we have the fall camp Hard Knocks for football HBO. But then the other thing was we had last year the spring Hard Knocks, the NFL offseason. Well, the NFL basically said, we're not going to get involved in that anymore. No team wants to do it. But we're going to have a North Carolina football Hard Knocks style series. Then the New York Post, and then out of nowhere, it just didn't happen. Well, over the last couple of days, the New York Post did report that Jordan Hudson's the reason that it didn't happen. That basically, as conversations got really, really, really deep, and they had press releases ready to go. They were good. They were this, they were that. And Jordan Hudson basically started making all these crazy demands. She wanted to be an executive producer. She wanted this. She wanted that. Now, again, I said this the other day. If she wants to be CC'd on Bill Belichick's emails, that's fine. I mean, a head football coach can't be responding to emails all day, every day. I don't even have a problem with that. But when she wants creative control, it's like this is going beyond an assistant, an executive, or whatever. Starting to get weird, okay? The second thing that to me was very weird was another article that came out on Wednesday in which apparently Miss Hudson, and again, it's not my personal business, but when she's dating a prominent football coach who coaches college football, we got to talk about it. She apparently has herself quite a little real estate portfolio out there in Massachusetts. This was also via the New York Post, in that in December 2023, she bought not one, but 2 different properties at well over $2 million a piece. And then in 2024, she bought a third property that is over $3 million. Okay. Now, again, their relationship, their money, their whatever. But as you can see, amassed an $8 million real estate portfolio within months of dating Bill Belichick. And so, listen, if that's how he, I'm not a mortgage broker here, but if that's how he wants to help her out in her young life, that's fine. But it's clear that, Bill Belichick said in one of his statements this week, like, oh, it's a personal but a professional relationship as well. Well, it feels like a little bit more than that. And so all these stories, listen, one story doesn't mean anything. Another story doesn't mean anything. But this is clearly starting to become something much bigger, to the point that the people that care about Bill Belichick are starting to get worried. Like I said, North Carolina is reportedly concerned about this relationship. She was apparently behind there not being Hard Knocks. Then I saw this on the Dan Patrick Show. So Charles Barkley was on the Dan Patrick Show, I presume, to talk about the NBA playoffs. But Charles Barkley has currently a 30-plus year friendship with Bill Belichick. And here's what Charles Barkley had to say about the situation.
What is Bill Belichick doing? Well, this is a very slippery subject for me because Bill's one of my really good friends. I'm not sure what's going on. He's been a great friend for me for a long time. We've been friends since he coached for the Browns. I think he got to be very careful right now. This is starting to be on a very slippery slope. He's the greatest football coach ever for him and Nick Saban, for college Nick Saban, for Bill to NFL. Yeah, I from what I'm hearing, it's starting to be a very slippery slope. And I never talk about people's personal relationship. That's another rule I got. But I will admit I'm a little concerned with some of the stuff that's going on. And I might actually reach out to him and make sure everything's good. But
So there you go. Charles Barkley, friend of Bill Belichick for like 35-ish years right now, is officially concerned about Bill Belichick. What I would just say is, listen, to me, couple things. First of all, let me say this. I think there's a best case and a worst case scenario. By the way, I see the chat is very lively right now. One shout out to the Ed who says producer Matt is killing it. AI Matt is, I think, the new nickname since producer Matt is very mysterious. Anyway, apparently nobody had a girlfriend at 27 when he was 40. That's not the same as 73 and 24. Let me say this. I think there's a best case and a worst case scenario, okay? I think the best case scenario is it's just really weird, okay? Because in my opinion, here's my thought, is that we're talking about we understand we're talking about Bill Belichick, right? And what you say whatever you want about Bill Belichick, but when he was the New England Patriots head coach, what was the one thing that was like the Patriot way was defined by one thing? It was, hey, we're not going to have any sort of distractions to distract us from football. That's what a distraction is, distracts you from things, right? So now he's the head coach at North Carolina, and literally not only is he the distraction, but he is the distraction day over day over day over day over day. What is the old saying? Control what you can control. Do your job. We'll see if Bill Belichick does his job between the white lines, but he is certainly creating probably a lot of negative press for the North Carolina football team. And it's just weird to see Bill Belichick being the guy that's in the headlines as opposed to, being on the sidelines and whatever. I will say this though, listen, I'm not casting dispersions on Miss Hudson. It's all looking a little weird though, isn't it? I mean, and I think that's where you have to be worried. An $8 million real estate portfolio out of nowhere. She wants creative control, executive producer. By the way, speaking of TMZ Torres, this is the other part of it. I said that Bill Belichick is a state employee of North Carolina, the highest paid state employee. By all accounts, it seems as though she is a state employee of North Carolina as well. Reportedly, she's been telling people, I'm the COO or the CFO or something of North Carolina football. Well, is she on the payroll? Because if so, now she's a state employee, and I think it becomes a different conversation as well. So listen, I'm going to hope for the best. I'm going to hope the $8 million, real estate portfolio was just something that he helped her out with, and that, whatever. I don't know how to say it diplomatically. I just hope that I just hope it's true love. Let me put it that way, because I think it's looking like something much darker. We've heard reports, by the way, that some of Bill Belichick's family isn't crazy about this relationship. But I'll tell you this, it seems like she's certainly setting things up for a world without Bill Belichick. And I don't know what that would even mean as far as, when he's not coaching, when he's not this, when he's not that, but an $8 million real estate portfolio in her name. It's getting weird, people. It's getting weird. And like I said, if say this, if he goes 11-1, none of it matters. But if he goes 7-5, the spotlight is only going to get bigger. And I'll say this too. I said this on Tuesday's show. In my opinion, I really feel like that when it comes to this situation, I really think this Bill Belichick thing is just going to end weirdly. I said this the other day, is that, listen, I don't think it affects his legacy. He still won 6 Super Bowls, whatever. That's never going to be taken away from him. But at the same time, when I look at how this relationship has shaken out and is playing out, I just think this is kind of I said it the other day, Willie Mays playing for the New York Mets, Patrick Ewing played for the Orlando Magic, Hakeem Olajuwon played for the Toronto Raptors. That is a real thing. You can Google it. I think that is this chapter of Bill Belichick's career. I think at best, it just kind of flames out. This is the coaching job, not the relationship. I think it flames out. We kind of just remember, oh yeah, Belichick was at Carolina for a few years. That was weird. I'm hoping it's not anything worse. Again, she apparently has an $8 million real estate portfolio. I think we can all do the math on what that may or may not mean. We'll see. But the one thing that is clear, Belichick at the very least has become a very big distraction, a guy that for years told everybody else, do your job, don't be a distraction. That's exactly what he's being. All right, let's go ahead and end on a much, 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 much lighter note. So I'll tell you this, we don't talk NBA on this show. I don't know. Why would we talk NBA? We love college basketball. We love college football. We love when we watch it, we love the NFL as well. JJ Redick, though, because of his background as a Duke basketball player, a media member, and just an all-around smug, not likable guy, he's kind of an easy topic to talk about, okay? And so Lakers get embarrassed in the playoffs. This is not going to be an NBA segment, by the way. But for those of you who are new to the show, and we literally, and I mean this sincerely, we have thousands of people who had never listened to this show probably before January of 2025. So we have thousands of new listeners, thousands of new followers. A lot of people don't know. Torres and JJ Redick have a pretty lengthy beef going back about 3 years. He kind of called me out. He called me some names. And so I'll tell you this, when JJ Redick crashed and burned in the playoffs on Wednesday night, there was one person that got an extra little kick out of it, and it was your boy Torres. We're not going to break down Lakers Timberwolves, but we will talk about the beef and why I am, for one, thrilled to see JJ Redick. It's 1 year. He's an awful NBA head coach right now. Okay, so what is the backstory on JJ Redick and Torres? Okay, so this is a story that goes back to a simpler time, the spring of 2022. Okay, now I'll try to be quick for those of you who have heard this story before. Spring of 2022, NCAA tournament. Houston and Villanova are playing in the Elite Eight. That was the year, if you remember, it was they called it the quote-unquote blue blood Final Four. It was Villanova, Duke, Carolina, and Kansas in New Orleans. Villanova played Houston in the Elite Eight. Ugly game, defensive game. We know how Houston plays. Villanova, of course. Villanova, I think everyone remembers the great offense, but they were an elite defensive team as well. So it's kind of this ugly back-and-forth game. And, of course, when that happened, we had all of NBA Twitter that tunes into March Madness talking about how terrible college basketball is, the product's embarrassing, blah, 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 this and that. And so at the time, I remember just sitting there watching the game saying, well, yeah, I mean, if NBA players were allowed to defend the way, think about how Houston defends. No one in the NBA, you cannot defend like that, or you will be called for 1 million fouls and you'll have all your players foul out in 3 minutes. That's just how Houston defends. So I put out a very innocent tweet. Producer Matt, if you have the first tweet, we can take it up for a second. And so I said, at that time, I said, look, this is from March of 2022. I said, I love all the arguments I'm seeing about the quality of playing college hoops or the product or whatever. Trust me, if NBA teams played 48 minutes of defense like Houston and Nova tonight, we'd see a lot of games in the 70s and 80s in that league too. So this was from March of 2022. Now, I put out that tweet. I didn't think anything of it. I went back to watching the game. Well, NBA Twitter was not happy that I had the audacity to say that the NBA is anything other than the most perfect product that has ever existed, okay? Except that the thing was, though, there was the king of NBA Twitter at the time, a guy by the name of JJ Redick, worked at ESPN, hosted a popular podcast, and he did not like what I had to say about the NBA. He tweeted, quote, "Tell me you don't watch the NBA without telling me you don't watch the NBA." First of all, is that not the most JJ Redick tweet that you have ever seen in your life? Well, I bring it up because I was like, okay, weird tweet. Whatever. I didn't really think anything of it. I may have responded, whatever, but I kind of forgot about it. I bring it up because about 2-3 weeks later, I'm sitting there doing work, and all of a sudden my phone blows up. And everyone's like, Torres, did you see what JJ Redick said about you? And I'm like, what JJ Redick said about me? What did JJ Redick have to say about me? Well, he went back to the tweet and on his podcast had some not very nice things to say about Torres. Producer Matt, play the sound.
Tweet the other day, some knucklehead said, if NBA teams played defense as hard as college kids, I bet you the scores would be in the 70s and 80s too. First of all, I mean, it's just math. First of all, the shot clock's longer. So there's going to be more possessions in an NBA game. And there's 8 more minutes of basketball. So, fuckhead, that's not.
So there you go. Listen, I stayed out of it. But when JJ Redick called your boy an F-head, that's when it got personal. By the way, for those of you who listen to the show that say, why do you always say at the end, shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head? Well, it's because the guy called me an F-head first, okay? So anyway, I bring it up because the guy calls me an F-head. Now, the funny postscript to this story is that I ended up being right because NBA teams score in the 80s all the time. And so back in 2022, every single time a team scored in the 80s, what would happen? Well, I would tweet at JJ Redick, and all of the followers of the pod would tweet at hey, JJ, did you see the Suns beat the Mavs 94-88? Did you see the Timberwolves beat the Spurs 92-87? Did you know teams? And it got to the point where he had to block me. And so I only bring it up because ever since then, listen, JJ Redick doesn't seem like a sympathetic figure, easy to root for. But I'll tell you this. He becomes so much easier to root against when he calls you an F-head out of his podcast and you're like, well, now I just want to see this guy fail. So you can imagine how excited I was. I don't watch the NBA playoffs, but I was pretty darn excited to tune in on Wednesday night with the Lakers. Remember, Lakers have 2 Hall of Famers, probably 2 of the top 10 players in the league, and they're trailing 3-1 going into this game. And so if you don't think that this was a little bit of a Christmas Eve type feel in the Torres household, I don't know what to tell you. May have had a cold drink in my hand, I don't clear the schedule for an NBA game very often, but to see JJ Redick crash and burn, you got to understand that this was like Christmas, Hanukkah, Thanksgiving, Halloween, Easter all rolled into one. And the Lakers just took it on the chin on Thursday. Now, I'll tell you what, you know how I knew they were screwed? Did any of you guys see did you see the video of JJ Redick before the game? This is when I knew they were screwed. This shows you who JJ Redick really is, by the way. Producer Matt, so by the way, before we play the video, I should set up some context. I think everybody knows. But in game 3, JJ Redick, if I understand this correctly, now we were live on air during that game, but I'm pretty sure that JJ Redick did not make a substitution the entire second half. He played his starting 5 the entire second half. And oh, by the way, that's not bad, except for the fact that 1, no one has ever done that pretty much ever. 2, your 2 best players, 1 is 40 years old, the other one is out of shape. So maybe you give him a little bit of rest. Well, anyway, he was asked about it before the game, and his answer, that was when I knew that the Lakers were cooked going into game 5.
As you watch the film, what do you recall about your thought process in the moment? Sticking with the 5 you stuck with in the fourth quarter the other day. And is there an assistant or someone maybe that you'll lean on tonight, maybe to try to get some other guys involved if that opportunity presents itself?
Are you saying that because I'm inexperienced and that was an inexperienced decision that I made? Do you think I don't talk to my assistants about substitutions every single time out?
No, I just think there's a lot of coaches lean on their assistants in those situations.
As do I,
There's a lot going
every
on.
single time. That's a weird assumption.
Well, that's a weird assumption. That's what I knew they were cooked. And I tweeted it out. I said, look, that was the most baseline logical question ever. By the way, yeah, coaches do rely on your assistants. Are you checking in with them to make sure on substitutions is a perfectly normal question to ask. And he pranced off like a little whiner. This is why we all hate JJ Redick. This is why we were all rooting for him to fail, and he did. And I'll tell you this, it wasn't just that he failed. I would argue this was one of the great coaching meltdowns that I've ever seen. We talked about game 4 when he played his starters basically the entire second half. Game 5 on Thursday night, I know none of you watched it because the NBA ratings, as all you guys point out, are tanking, okay? And I'll tell you this. The Minnesota Timberwolves, if you actually watch the game, I swear to God, I thought the Minnesota Timberwolves were trying to lose that game. Because, by the way, JJ Redick, in all his genius, basically said before the game, we are not playing our only 7-footer, okay? And so basically they were playing a bunch of guys that are 6'7", 6'8", 6'9". By the way, how about this? JJ Redick actually played a guy by the name of Maxi Kleber, who has not played since January, literally made his Lakers debut in Game 5 in an elimination game in the playoffs. That's what we're talking about. By the way, this is how you know that JJ Redick was a colossal failure as a coach this year, okay? The Minnesota Timberwolves in this game went I've never seen this before. 7 of 47. That's not a made-up stat. 7 of 47 from behind the three-point line. 7 of 47 from behind the three-point line. 7 of 47. I'm not great at math. That is 14% from three, and they won the game. And so I'll tell you this. Tough night for JJ Redick. I don't really know what else I have to say other than that. That was one of the worst coaching performances that I have ever seen, okay? Because think about it. Game 4, disaster. Play your starters a million minutes. Game 5, acknowledge that you are not going to play your only 7-footer. Then Rudy Gobert, who is not known as an offensive guy, goes for 27 and 24. And then finally, you're playing guys that haven't played all season. It was a disaster. The team quit on him, by the way. I'll say this. This isn't an NBA pod, so we're not going to break it all down. But that was the first time I ever watched LeBron, and he was just kind of not really a factor. 22 points in 40 minutes. Luka hurt his back, kind of out of shape. That probably has something to do with it. But I would say poor JJ Redick, but kind of brought it on himself. And I will tell you this. It was one of the worst coaching jobs I've ever seen. And by the way, don't tell me about the Lakers roster, the Lakers this, the Lakers that. You know why? Producer Matt, what have the last 2 first-year head coaches done for the Los Angeles Lakers? Oh, I don't know. Frank Vogel won an NBA title. Darvin Ham made the Western Conference Finals. JJ Redick loses in the first round. Tough break, by the way, for a guy whose only qualification for the job was being LeBron's podcast and drinking buddy. We were talking about this last spring when he got the job. Remember, Dan Hurley was interested in Dan Hurley was never taking the job. It was always going to LeBron's drinking buddy. And last thing I'll say, by the way, when Dan Hurley interviewed, people were like, oh, you don't turn down the Los Angeles Lakers. You just don't. And what did I say? I said, what is this, 1984? Did I go in a DeLorean and it's 1984? Because the Lakers are a crap show, okay? I live in LA. The whole city hates the Lakers. It's unbelievable. LeBron has killed the brand. I'm not even kidding. Drafts his son when obviously he's not an NBA player. And by the way, don't tell me second-round picks don't matter. Naz Reid, undrafted. I think he had a pretty big role in this series. Oh, by the way, Jaden McDaniels of the Timberwolves was the 30th pick, so basically the last pick of the first round. He played a pretty big role. Yeah, second-round picks matter. The Lakers wasted one on a kid that can't play in the NBA. And then LeBron brought in his drinking buddy. And now here you have it, the worst coaching job we've ever seen as the Lakers are out of the first round of the playoffs. And I will tell you this, some of you guys have some very funny comments in the chat. We will not be addressing some of them, but I like a couple of these. JJ will be coaching DePaul in 2 years. Not a better coach than Chris Holtmann right now, I'll tell you that much. So I don't know if I feel about that. And then this is a great point by nobody. I don't even know if you were listening to the show last summer when we talked about this, but nobody brought up the good point. He said Kentucky offered more money to Dan Hurley than the Lakers did. Dan Hurley was never taking the Lakers job. He used it as leverage to get more from UConn. And by the way, the Lakers were using him because they knew they were hiring JJ Redick. So tough break for JJ Redick. I'd say you feel bad for him, but one, when you call your boy Torres an F-head, it gets personal. Two, I just think it's just so easy to root against him, isn't it? All right, I'll tell you what. Great show today. I think it's time for us to get out of here on a Thursday night. Back starting to hurt from sitting in a chair here for 2 hours straight. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Make sure to rate and review the show as well. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres pod on Instagram, Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com, Aaron Torres podcast questions at gmail.com. All for today's show. Appreciate your support. Probably we'll be back Sunday night, maybe Monday. We'll see what happens over the course of the weekend, but it's time for me to go. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. Shout out to JJ Redick, you F-head. Tough night for JJ Redick. Unblock me, bro. By the way, shout out Jordan Hudson. Be nice to Mr. Belichick. He's getting old. We'll be back Sunday night, new episode.